My name is Jannie Berggren. I teach didactics, but I am an ex-flamenco teacher and dancer. And in this context, I will present a development project, a possible idea of how to work with imitation, interpretation, and identity in a regular dance class. I chose to call this a patchwork, thought about the more commonly used toolbox, but decided on a less masculine metaphor. I see my colleagues work with lots of great, interesting ideas, mostly using improvisation as a tool, as we saw one example with Katarina Lundmark yesterday, but I don't see so much work around imitation and interpretation, so that's what I'm trying. The question is, how can we open up the possibilities to, within the context of the dance class, work more consciously and varied with interpretation and identity to give students tools to construct dancing identities? I am happy to introduce 4 students, Thea, Lina, Emily, and Sara, from the Institution of Dance Pedagogy, 2nd year, who have been generous with their non-existing free time and will help me to give life to this presentation. You will meet them soon. What I am actually doing is I'm working on a text that, where I hope to give practical ideas together with theoretical inspiration that may be of interest to some of you, teachers of dance. In this presentation, the possibilities for practice will be in focus. The students are not a research group, they're just helping me with examples. My starting points are that I believe that imitation is an irreplaceable tool to reach certain goals in teaching dance. For example, to learn specifics in a style or genre, or ideas important for a particular teacher. I think it widens the physical perspectives and possibilities for the dancer, and it opens for performance variation. I also think that work with only imitation is limiting. And I believe that dialogue is an underused resource in dance class. And I assume that consciousness about our influence in the process of construction of identities and an openness to discuss identity could be stimulating and enhance growth for students as well as for teachers. In my experience as a student and a dancer, I have memories of great, inspiring dancers whom I tried to copy at the same time that I was told to do it my way. Sometimes confusing, but I found the conflicting ideas inspiring and challenging. As a flamenco dancer, I reused material from my teachers in different ways, which became my ways. I have a notion that imitation today is seen as a non-creative, only reproductive. I don't think it is, but necessarily, but I believe we need to be clear about why we ask students to imitate and present ideas for how to handle the process over to them. Switch power from teacher to student. My interest has therefore focused on working with questions around identity through the material presented by the teacher. Each time and each art form and each genre has its particular issues that we work with. And I question the fact that we stay rather close within those frameworks when we teach dance. We are easily influenced by collective thinking and the use of language of movement. In our global society, where everything is multi, I find that we could also search for ideas and themes from other cultures, other times, or art forms, and use them as a base for interpretation. I see possibilities in working with other starting points than making material mine. Maybe just the opposite, the construction of an I through dancing material not necessarily mine. There are an incredible amount of ideas waiting to be discovered and explored. And as a bonus, we would also learn from other art forms, eras, and cultures. As we all know, ideas about identity have changed and are changing from perspectives of essentialism, that we have a core identity, possibly to do with our modernist heritage that Eva Antila gave us an interesting overview of yesterday, to ideas about identity as a construction or even a myth. We all know how identities today are constructed on Facebook, during live games, role-playing, etc. My notion is that in dance class, we mostly dance ourselves. We work on finding what we believe is within us. If we open up for perspective, for example, from the theater, I see advantages when it comes to challenging questions around gender, for example, simply through the fact that you can dance somebody else. I believe that it would give us opportunities to see ourselves in a different light when performing roles or using musical concepts foreign to the genre and to ourselves, and then talking about how we experience it, using a dialogue between dancer and movement, the teacher's original and the different interpretation, between viewer and dancer, with the goal being looking at myself in relationship to the other. Real, respectful talk about the fact that being me is nothing set, and we can make choices inspired by meeting with other ways of dancing, better understanding different horizons, ideas through dancing and talking to each other. Okay, now we will go on and try to give some examples of how this could be possible. We have Emily and Sarah, they're jazz students, and Lina and Tia contemporary. And they will work with material from two of our teachers. Jazz, Emma Svedberg, known to you all from Katarina Lundmark's presentation yesterday. And the contemporary material is from Karin Munters Jameson, known to some of you who took the Klein class this morning. They kindly offered their material for us to use. The music we use is for jazz is by a group called Idiot Boys Dub, and for contemporary the music is by two Swedish musicians, Mats Sundin and Lars Norman. So I will try to give a brief description of an example of how this process could be realized. But we would start with a group with choosing the material, and in our case this is the jazz material, please. Actually, I'll move this. Maybe I would start with asking the students to describe themselves, how they experience themselves as dancer, to write me something or talk to each other about that. Thereafter, the students would then take some kind of ownership of this material. There would be no right or wrong. My ideas would no longer, other than the steps and the timing. That's the limits. We would play around with variations, strictly defined, clean concepts, simple themes and their opposite, and a dialogue of how it feels, what feels foreign and what feels more at home. And later we would go into questions like, how do we understand ourselves in relationship to what we dance? Can the foreign be a possible choice for me? A constructed self, or if you prefer, an addition to a dancing identity. So these first kind of exercises that you will see now would be like improv, but improvisational themes, but staying faithfully to the teacher's material. I presented to the students qualities. They could work with qualities or energies or shapes, with feelings, maybe with smells or tastes or colors. And this is the choices that they made. We start with the jazz. So, now you get to talk. So first you saw Small, and then Big by Emily, and then you saw by Sarah Frustration, and the second time Enjoyment. And now I better say, because it has to be through the mic.
Soft and powerful.
Thea will do soft first, and then powerful.
Closed and free.
And Lina will be first closed, and then free. Go ahead. parallel to that, we will discuss questions around identity. And then we will go on to a more, like a second level, where starting points from theater and music would be in focus. We start with the concept of cover and version from music. So first, Emily and then Sarah will do a cover or a version of this combination. Go ahead. And now we get to the last part where we work with from starting point from a theater. We work with roles, like to be somebody else, and we had all sorts of different ideas from Barack Obama to French actress and moose hunter, but we decided on to work with two different photographs, two pictures that they used as inspiration for being somebody other than themselves. Okay. Okay, just a short sentence to finish off. I thought this was only about dancing identities in the beginning, but the more I think about it, I think that the discussion and the dialogue about this could be about all of, like, the dancing identity, maybe not so separate from anything that is you. For me, flamenco in the beginning was in all its aspects foreign. I saw it as a way to dance, but it became, with time, much more. And I think I would have really appreciated knowing more about that process, making something foreign into my identity and what that meant as the difference between being something private and something rather different as a dancer. Okay, sorry it took a little too long. Thank you very much. Thank you. Emma, Karin, tack.
We have time for a few questions, one or two. Any interesting views? Annika. Yeah, for the...
Okay. It's more of a comment, because I think that it's very difficult to imitate in the sense of the word to do exactly like somebody else, because the mere fact of being another body, another person, carrying another history, another presence, another feeling, emotion, will create something else. The thing, I think, though, didactically or teaching-wise, is to allow that to happen. I mean, Deleuze is talking about everything is sort of like förskjut. A repetition is always a transferals. I don't know if I'm using the right vocabulary. So we can never actually imitate. But we can believe that we are doing that if we are not allowed to know that we are not. Do you see what I mean by that?
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting, because also being invited to another person's world is very exciting.
I agree, of course. And the talk about all these things, the stuff that you just said, I think is really what is the most important of it. There's nothing so special about this, but it is important to talk about it. Yeah.
Susanne Ran.
Thank you. Thank you for an interesting presentation. I was just wondering a bit, when you described how you work with the dancers and how they describe their experiences, if you also include the interaction of the others. That means if the dancers describe what they experience, it might sometimes differ if you ask another dancer to describe what they see they are doing. And that sometimes creates a constructive sort of conflict, if I can use that word. But it can also be a frustration for dancers, is my experience. So it can be constructive, it can be both, but it is an important part of experience identity. So I was wondering how you cope with this.
I assumed that all those ways of discussing, but just at the very strict point is that not to have opinions, of course, but to, if I see you dance, of course it's interesting for you, for me to know how you felt, but for you to know what I saw. And all these kinds of dialogues, I think. Yes.
I think this dialogue will go on.
Okay, thank you for coming to. One more thing. I have a little more thorough, how do you say, noggrann? Well, not thorough, but yeah, detailed. Thand you. So if you would like a piece of paper, I can give you. I think there may be more. I have 50, but you can. You can get some more. Thank you. Thank you.